Hi, I'm Steve Zemke. I'm with Friends of Seattle's Urban Forest, also on the Seattle Urban Forestry Commission. And for over 8 years now, we've been working with an interim urban forestry ordinance to protect trees. It's when you start looking at what Portland has done, what Vancouver, BC, local cities like Lake Forest Park, we're way behind in measures to protect trees. They require most of these places now have moved to requiring permits to remove trees, to requiring notice to remove trees, and also replacement. SDOT already does this in the city. What the community groups around the city want to do is we want to sort of expand and incorporate some of those ideas. But one of the key things in going over the development issue is that developers really don't have to replace the trees they remove. They are, as acknowledged by DCI, are the place where most trees are being removed at the moment. When they go in and you can build to the current ordinance says you can save trees as long as it will not limit the development potential of a lot. Well, that becomes most of the lot, so the trees disappear. We're called the Emerald City, and the trees, as you have already rightly mentioned, they're not just something of beauty or value to the property. It's a health value, it's a carbon sink. There are lots of things that trees provide. So this issue of the update of the tree ordinance is probably going to fall to the next mayor because it keeps getting put off year after year after year. And so one of the things is that this process is basically, in the past, has gone through the Department of Construction and Industries and their predecessor DPD. It's been a very internal process. The public hasn't really been involved in that process. And what Portland did, for instance, was put in place citizen panels to help develop an ordinance so that you got the broad community involvement. Are you willing to look at that type of proposal and look at a way that we can get replacement value for trees that are removed, particularly during development? Because that's where we're losing trees. And even though we have a recent study that indicates things are not that bad, you need to understand that that figure is a vegetation cover figure.
That's my question.
Okay.
The answer is yes. I don't think there's any decision. There's no decision that I think a mayor should make, particularly one on this that is such an important issue, not just for now, but for the city my children are going to inherit. And the more citizen input and expert input, I'd want to bring arborists, I'd want to bring some forest management people, I'd want to look at the city as a whole over a period of time. And it's not just trees, we have to look at the permeable ground that's being covered because that's a critical issue for runoff, which affects the salmon and the sound. When I was U.S. Attorney, we would bring the Clean Water Act enforcement cases, and people don't realize how much water is running off at any given time, and the more we get rid of our green spaces, we're also getting rid of those things that absorb that water, so there's not as much runoff. So trees, permeable ground, I think green space, we have to look at all those, and I would welcome the input of citizens. Make sure that I know who you are so I can call you and
we can talk some more, and there are other people involved. But I guess the thing I'd like to ask is just one quick question which follows up is the two previous mayors, the current or the two previous mayors have said yes, they are going to do this. Each time 4 years went by, nothing happened. Can you make a commitment that, say, within the first year or the second year, if this isn't progressing further than it should be, that you will make it a priority to say, we're pushing all this development, all this growth out there, and we need to deal with this now, not another 8 years or 10 years down the line?
I'm going to say yes, but change it just a little bit. We cannot plan the growth for this city moving forward without taking that into account. So planning our growth is a priority, and it can't happen unless we're looking at that as one of the livability factors.
All right. Thank you.
Can we keep our questions brief and let Jenny?
No, I like the long questions.
Kind of like yours, Bill.
Sarah Jane Siegfried. I'm a longtime affordable housing, low-income housing advocate, and I hear affordability thrown around all the time without people really defining it and sometimes not even knowing what they're talking about. So on the one hand, somebody complains that, my two doctor friends can't afford to buy a house in Seattle, and I'm all, gee, too bad. But the city is not going to be making policy about relatively wealthy people being able to afford to buy a house. That is not what we're here for. So some people have the idea, and I think this is baked into the HALA, the Grand Bargain, baked in, that we simply build more and build taller, that eventually rents will come down. And that it's the old Milton Friedman idea from the University of Chicago way back, trickle down, and they call it now filtering, and even their own theorists have said, well, you know, it actually takes 40 years for those buildings to become less expensive and affordable to low-income people. We don't have 40 years to house our homeless population. So are you of the camp that just says build more and it'll be affordable? Or do we have to somehow provide subsidies in order to create adequate, affordable housing? And if so, the Grand Bargain says, well, that each of the units produced by the MHA is going to provide about $85,000 towards that unit that costs $250,000 or $300,000. And guess where the rest of the money comes from? So 1/3 the developers, 1/4 the developers, and 3/4 our taxes, Seattle Housing Levy, State Housing Trust Fund, et cetera, and so forth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, let me answer your question if I think that let me unpack it a little bit. So first, when I say affordability, there's two kinds of affordability, and I think the city can have policies actually that do affect middle class affordability. But for low income, we're talking about what percentage of, the AMI should we be shooting at? And if you look, that's for the average mean income. Area mean income.
Median.
So,
Area,
mean
income.
median.
Yes.
Half more, half less.
Philadelphia, by the way, and it's matched in Seattle.
The AMI is higher than Seattle's average income.
Exactly right. So we got to take a smaller percentage of that. And I've started to sit and talk to people about, where is that right number that really gets where people today are? Is it 85, 65, 55? And I think we've got to be right and true about the number. So we've got to make sure that when we're talking about low income, they really can afford somewhere to live. I don't know if all of you saw the news story about a month ago when Section 8 opened up again for just a small number, and thousands of people filled the room just to get in the lottery. That's wrong. We've got to have more availability. So,
And then the people that got them, excuse me, Alex, the people that won the lottery can't use those in Seattle. They cannot find an affordable apartment.
exactly. So you have to have public housing, more public housing options. You have to have, when you talk about subsidies, again, I think one of the things we can do right now is try to give ourselves the tools so that the city can say, if you're going to provide affordable housing, we're going to give you a tax break. And because we have stock right now that if we could convert it or keep it, if we could provide some immediate relief. But we don't have the ability to do that because state law won't let us. So we have to do that. We have to look at rent subsidies for people. And then we also have to look at way, I think, to have the other part of affordable housing, which is for middle income people. Because middle income people are also, the people who have, the family wage jobs, they're being pushed out of the city too. And I believe that we have to have a vibrant middle class to have a vibrant city. I think that is critical to our civic life, because that's what's going to be able to help, and that generosity is what helps us have the will to do what we need to do as a city, tax-wise and otherwise, to make sure that we're taking care of the people who don't have enough.
Yeah, I think I'm housing bill. Anybody have?
Hi,
How are you?
Tim Scowen. Lived in Seattle. I've lived in Seattle all my life. And I think, as we all know, we're going through an extraordinary period of property value increase. It's causing a lot of issues. My wife's parents lived in Palo Alto, and they were going through a similar situation. And what they did there was they froze the assessed property value for tax assessments, and then they reassessed the properties when they were sold. So retired people who are on low incomes and things were not getting priced out of their homes because of increasing property taxes over growth in an environment that they couldn't control. And it affects not only retired people, but renters, because landowners, landlords have to raise their rents to keep up with the property taxes, etc. How do you think that approach might apply to Seattle?
I think that could be an approach I'd be willing to look at. Again, we're going to need Olympia's approval, but I think we need to have a variety of ways to use the property tax valuations, which is a county measure. You know, the county is the one that evaluates. But one of the things I want to look at and talk to people about is we've had this unprecedented property value rise, which for the property tax measures above the lid makes your property taxes increase. You know, can we freeze those at a certain level? Would the city have that power? And then can we go and have the ability, for example, to, my only concern with I think it's worth looking at, my concern would be, would people game the system? And so people who didn't need that kind of relief would be getting it. And so I'd also want to look at whether we could get increased exemptions for people who were elderly or low income, categories like that. So that way you're really driving that tax reduction to the people who need it. And part of that is just a bias I have. You know, I've had good friends over the years who live in New York. Some of them now make a lot of money and they're living in a really nice rent-controlled apartment. They don't need it anymore. Other people do need it. So I want to make sure that we don't have that kind of gaming of the system. But I think it's worth looking at. I think it's absolutely one of the tools we have to look at.
Hi, Jenny, Bob Rosenberger. Since the mayor is in fact not the chief policymaker, but the chief administrator, I'd like to shift gears. And that is, do you support the current practice of selecting department heads through a nationwide search as opposed to seeking out and nurturing talent with local connections? What's your preference and your thinking in that area?
I think you have to do both. When I was U.S. Attorney, some people I promoted from within and some people I brought in. And I think what you have to do is, what's the department? What are the qualities you need? What kind of experience do you need? And sometimes you have to find someone as a nationwide search, and sometimes you bring someone from within. And I think you really have to look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Next question.
It seems like Seattle's at war with the federal government right now, whether it's Paris or immigration or Jeff Sessions coming to take the joints out of my cold dead hands.
Hope you're not dead.
Well, I hope so too. But so I'm curious, particularly for your perspective as a former federal prosecutor running to take over a city that's at war with the Justice Department, what do you think is the next battleground, and what tangible things are you going to do to stand?
Donald Trump's values are so antithetical to our values that we will unavoidably be in battle. The day his travel ban was handed down, I drove to SeaTac Airport because I was representing the Port of Seattle, because they're saying, we have all these people being held, we don't know what to do. I called friends and associates at 2 of the big civil rights groups and said, I'm going to need lawyers for people, can you come? We went there. In a very short period of time, and a lot of scrambling, we were able to get one of the first federal court orders to prohibit the enforcement of that travel ban, and literally had an airplane brought back to the gate so 2 men that they were trying to send to Dubai could get off and go on their ways or join their family. So I think that we are going to have to protect our immigrants. We're going to have to make sure if the ACA, if they do what they want to do to Obamacare, Harborview will lose hundreds of millions of dollars. And the health care for this city will change overnight. We've got to fight that. We've got to protect against it. I think that the marijuana, we know Jeff Sessions has made public statements that he wants to close our system down. I don't think he'll be successful. You know, I've been in that office. I know a little bit about it. But I think it's going to take a coordinated effort of the Attorney General, the City Attorney, and leaders to make sure that we keep him from doing that. So I think that, unfortunately, we will have a number of areas where we actually have to fight the Trump administration. And I can promise you, that's a fight I'm ready for.
Hi for Trump.
So this is one of the first forums of the year, and I came specifically today because the scuttlebutt on the street is that you're the developer's candidate in terms of access and in possible results. So give me your 30-second elevator speech to confirm or deny.
I deny that I'm the developer's candidate. I have the support of the business community. This morning I was at a labor forum. I want the support of the labor committees, and I want the support of neighborhoods. I want to be the mayor for all people. The best thing that tells you what kind of mayor I'm going to be will be what I've done in my life. And I have devoted over 30 years to a number of issues that matter to me. LGBT gay rights, police reform, criminal justice reform. I was involved in setting up one of the first drug courts here so we could stop people from going to incarceration, one of the first mental health courts. I'm the person who drove police reform. So I will make sure, I know how developers work,
Okay.
and I'm gonna make sure.
On those two topics.
Yeah, I'm gonna make sure that we hold developers accountable. And I'm the ones that can go to them and say, you promised. You didn't just promise the city, you promised me. And I know how development works, and I'm gonna make sure that we're always looking for what the public interest is.
Okay. It is that access question that is really key. We can, I don't know if you know this, but you cannot meet with the mayor. You cannot get to the mayor. But I see suits going into the mayor's office. So it's
Well, here's what I wanna
access.
change about that. I wanna do this when I'm mayor.
Yeah, he hasn't done this. He does tightly controlled, find it, fix it, surrounded by people. No communication with the constituents.
All right, well, I hope to change that. And look, you can't be everywhere every day,
Got that?
but I wanna be accessible.
You cannot.
I cannot?
No, you can't.
Okay. Alex says I can't, he's wrong.
One of these good old singing mics, huh? Anyway, my name is Marguerite Richard, and I'm pretty sure that you've seen me out and about.
I have Marguerite, how are you?
Well, I'm not doing good.
Yeah, tell me.
And because Black lives are not mattering. They saying it, but the reflection, this is not the change that Black lives can believe in. Honorable Michael B. Fuller's not here to speak on behalf of himself. Okay, but it's put a lot of sickness and a lot of stress and duress on us as a community and as individual people, where they have contributed wonderful things to their society, but yet still we're on the table, on the menu, on the chopping block, slaughter, whatever. And I'm holding the envelope. I know this lady that just was in the green is right, because I'm holding a letter right here, envelope saying from the United States Courthouse, 700 Stewart Street, where you used to work. And this is an atrocity, just like she was saying. I went up to the floor, on the mayor's floor, and opened up the door, and there was his guard. Don't you know he ran? Why you running? Fear is not of God. These people are human out here, and they deserve to be able to come in and be respected as individuals. If they have something to say, by golly, take time out for them. And so the Bertha Landis room, the only reason why I mention that, because that's a room. It's a big room where people can come and talk about what does matter and how we're going to fix it. Yeah, we done found everything in the world, huh? Talking about finding it and fixing it. If you see something, say something. I see something every day. Every single day. So that's my question. They say to be or not to be, that is the question. Are we going to get that type of liberty that we're looking for? Yeah, I'm talking to everybody, because there might be another mayor or council person in the audience that want to rise up today.
What's your question for the council?
Huh? That's it. She already knows. She know who I am. She know I've been standing up for police reform. I went there way before they had the consent decree. She said, come out to the little old room and tell everybody all about how you've been abused. And then after the fact, then here come the settlement agreement. But the mess was going on 10 and 15 years before then. Do you understand me in this room, people?
Thank you.
Question simple.
See,
We need
so
open
they
better
can't
room
answer
every
it.
week
When it comes to
for free
black people, they
conversation,
can't answer it.
for fair election.
Okay, we've got 3 minutes.
What does mean quiet?
All right,
She have right and I don't? Why?
I'm listening.
Hi, I'm Matt Atkins from Queen Anne, and I was wondering if you could commit to hiring a director of homelessness within 30 days of you taking office, or making sure there's someone in there if George Scarola continues. And also, if you could commit to having maybe once a month meeting with people in Seattle that have experienced homelessness or have formerly experienced homelessness, and listen to what their perspectives are and their experiences and their ideas. In addition to, I would assume that you would also meet with the agencies as well. I hope that you would also like to listen to the individual people on a regular basis.
Absolutely. Break it down a little bit, because I'm going to be honest, I can't commit to a certain date by which I'm going to get someone or the title they're going to have, but homelessness is going to be a priority before, if I were lucky enough to get elected, I'd know in November, and I would hope by January, I would have the framework for immediate plan. And that plan would have to include not just the service providers, the people who are suffering homelessness, to find out what kind of services have helped you, which ones do you need, and so I would commit to that. Thank you very much.
Hi, Jenny. My name is Jan Brucker. I live in Licton Springs. I'm interested in your thoughts about preserving existing housing stock, specifically aging apartments like we see all through Capitol Hill, Eastlake, other parts of the city, the 6 and 8 unit buildings that were the densified housing back when they were built. Are you open to either lowering taxes or making air rights above them available so that those buildings can stay and keep their Seattle character, number one, and serve as low-income housing, which they now are?
Yeah, that's it. I hadn't thought about that particular thought of it, but it's something I'll definitely look at. And I think that we talked about the property taxes already as a way to preserve existing affordable housing. I hadn't thought about air rights. Look, I think we got to use every tool we have. And again, there's not one size fit all. Just because you're a brick building now doesn't mean it couldn't be something better. But thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Hi, my name is Jim Street, and I'm interested in your philosophy of leadership. Specifically, in the last 16 years, we've had a number of liberal mayors whose commitment is to get things done, as you've said, but whose definition of that was to accumulate as much power in their own hands as possible, while disempowering the people who work for them, and also the community. So I'm interested in how you define your philosophy of leadership and what it involves in terms of empowering others besides yourself.
Yeah. I have found when I've been in position of leaderships, including when I ran the two U.S. attorney offices, and then I was in charge of all the cyber crime programs for DOJ, I was in a leadership position. The first thing you got to do is hire really smart people. My goal is to hire people who are smarter than you. You have to know what's going on as mayor, but you've got to let people do their job. And if I had successful department heads that were known in their own right for doing a really great job, I'd be really pleased about that and wouldn't feel like I needed to be getting the credit down in the micromanaged level. You know, a perfect example is from the outside, I think Kathleen O'Toole has done a terrific job. And I think as a police chief, she's the kind of leader there that you look at and you think, why would you get in her way? So I think, you know, some agencies, the truth is, where the rubber meets the road, the mayor just has to know more and has to be involved in the details of the decisions. But that doesn't mean that you don't hire people and let them do their job. So I believe in strong leaders, and I'll tell you this, I don't want to surround myself with people who just agree with me. My favorite kind of person I work with is if someone will look me in the eye and say, that's a stupid idea, Jenny, and then tell me why. So, see, back of the room is saying, that's a stupid idea, Jenny. And they're going to tell me why I'm stupid. That's all right.
We ran out of time.
Are we out of time for you?
Yes.
We had is anyone else coming in?
There is another candidate coming after you. You have 2 minutes for a closing.
Absolutely. Can I cede my closing statement to one more question?
Let's have that one.
Yeah, go quick. I'll cede my closing statement to the question.
I wanted to know what role historic preservation would play, both in saving buildings and uses like the Pike Place Market.
Critical. Seattle would not be Seattle without Pike Place Market. And I was, I was in Seattle when we had the fight to preserve Pike Place Market. I think the buildings, some of the buildings you go around and the treasures, I hate it when things suddenly disappear. So I think we have to work as hard as we can to keep those treasures as part of Seattle. Now that's going to look different depending on what it is. Sometimes, and usually I will be honest, I personally don't like it, but I think it ends up being the right result. They just keep parts of the building as a facade. But we've got to keep some of the character of Seattle. I mean, one of the things I like seeing is the old door pat photographs that show Seattle then, Seattle now. And I think our job is to be, what is Seattle future? And what do we want that to look like? How do we preserve it? How do we be the kind of community and city we need where we all can be there, people still want to come? I tell you, I look at every neighborhood different now that I'm running for mayor. You just see things you don't see before. You notice what's livable, what's walkable, what's dirty, what's not. You notice, you see it as if you were a tourist for the first time seeing Seattle. And I hope never to lose that way I look at Seattle if I'm lucky enough to be mayor, because I think you always have to be thinking about, is it working, and what will it be in the future? So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Good work.